What is soil? Is soil the same as fertilizer, manure, or compost? Is it alive or dead? First off, let's explore the difference between soil and dirt. Dirt is not the grime on your shoes or the gross stuff under your nails. That is, unless you're gardening. Dirt comes from an ancient source and is part of one of the most important life systems on Earth. Dirt is the mineral composition of soil. Mountains break down over time to create rocks and then eventually dirt. These tiny rocks are categorized under sand, silt, clay, and loam. Sand has the biggest visible pieces. Sand is great for not becoming waterlogged because water can run through the grains easily. But that also means that sand has trouble holding on to water and also nutrients. This type of soil will dry out more easily as water flows through it. Clay has the smallest grains. While sand has water flowing easily through it, clay does the opposite. Clay can hold on to water and nutrients, but does not let things flow, including air, and can more easily become compacted. In terms of size, silt is somewhere in between sand and clay. It can hold on to some nutrients and water. Finally, loam is a mixture of sand, silt, and clay, but can vary a lot depending on how much of each type it has. The dirt you have is what you inherit from the history of the land you live on. You cannot really change the particle sizes, but there are things you can do to make your plants happy in the soil you have. Which brings us to soil. Now that we know what dirt is, what is soil? Soil is a combination of things. Approximately, this is what you would find in soil: 45% dirt, 5 to 10% organic matter, 20 to 30% air, and 20 to 30% water. Organic matter comes from dead and living creatures, roots, and manure. Mammoths, squirrels, plants, they are all part of our soil. How? When living things die, they eventually become part of the soil. But death isn't the only thing to add to the soil's organic matter. Animals can also contribute to soil organic matter with the poop they leave behind. Manure is nothing new, and it comes from much more than just cows. Think about the Earth's past. How many animals do you think pooped exactly where you're standing? While they live, the organisms in your soil also have roles that are super important to soil health. You may be familiar with some, like for example worms, but there is much more going on under your feet. What lives in the soil? Although it's easy to think of soil as a big brown layer that covers our planet, soil itself is alive. Healthy soils are bursting with life. We just don't see it because it happens underground. Plants cannot get nutrition from dirt alone. And fertilizers offer a temporary fix that can harm our soils and plants in the long run. Their nutrition is also super limited compared to what healthy soils can offer. We need organic matter and soil life for a healthy soil and for healthy plants. So what kind of life can we find in the soil? We have burrowing animals like moles and chipmunks. Then we can find a lot of other things that we didn't know much about till very recently. Like for example bacteria, fungi, archaea, insects, and more. Decomposers. Bacteria and fungi are some of the biggest decomposers in the soil. How do decomposers work? They break down dead organic matter. Fungi tends to like brown and dead mulch, like leaves and small bits of wood, whereas bacteria likes greener mulch, like freshly cut grass. What would happen if there were no more decomposers? The world would be piled with dead things, leaves, branches, and poop. When decomposers eat, they gather a bunch of great nutrients like carbon and nitrogen. By breaking things down, they make this nutrition more available to plants. Aerating the soil. Remember how air is important to soils? Worms and arthropods are great allies as they help create pockets of air in the soil. Arthropods and nematodes move around the soil. But they are not alone. While they move around, they carry passengers like a bus. Who are these passengers? Even smaller organisms. This spreads all kinds of species in the soil. Friendships in the soil. Did you know plants can communicate with the soil? Plants release a liquid through their roots that wakes specific bacteria and tells them what they need. Although this may seem like a rude way to wake someone up, the bacteria will be hard at work to provide the plant with what it needs. And over time will multiply. In return, the bacteria will get some sugars and carbs. A lot of plants also have a special relationship to mushrooms, thanks to the mycorrhizal networks that reaches their roots. After decomposing material, the mycorrhizal networks carry nutrients and water to plants, and in return, receive sugars. This system makes plants able to reach nutrients and water far from the reach of their roots. So how far are we talking exactly? Some systems can spread for acres. That means one mycorrhizal network could travel through an entire neighborhood. And the list could go on. There is a whole world underneath our feet that we are only just starting to understand. It then makes sense that in permaculture, some say we feed the soil, not the plants. Healthy soil take care of plants, which take care of the animals, like us, that eat them. Challenges of industrial agriculture. What we typically consider as agriculture is industrial agriculture with monocrops. Monocrops are when we grow just one type of plant. We see this in crops like corn, wheat, mustard, canola, and soy. There are benefits to growing one plant in large amounts. Machinery is made to prep, plant, water, spray, pick, and process these crops rapidly and efficiently. But through this efficiency, what do we lose? There are many practices that are common in industrial agriculture that can be bad for the land, the wildlife, and us humans who eat the food from these farms. It's a big topic, but for today, we'll focus on what affects the health of our soils. Bare soil. In industrial agriculture, we see a lot of bare soils between plants and in between growing seasons. This leaves the area vulnerable to erosion from wind and rain, overheating, soils drying, and losing nutrition as well as soil life. Soil is very precious and necessary to our nutrition and to the environment itself. Leaving it exposed is risky and dangerous. When was the last time you saw exposed soil in a natural and healthy ecosystem? It is very rare to see bare soil in nature, and for a reason. Compacted soil. Compaction happens when soil is pushed together. You can commonly see this on pathways and trails where lots of people travel. All those stomping human feet over time push the soil down and compress it. When soil is compacted, you will notice that the soil is bare with little to no plant life, and that the soil feels hard to the touch. Compaction can happen super fast when soils are wet, like for example in the spring. You can imagine now how big machines could really affect the soil, especially if many are used throughout the year from the time the soil is prepped to plant till the harvest. So why is avoiding compaction important? Well, first of all, compaction can harm and kill roots. Also, when soil gets compacted, there is not much room left for air or water, which is an important part of the soil. Finally, when we don't have enough air, bad soil organisms can take over because a lot of the good critters are not able to live without oxygen. Tilled soil. There is also lots of debate over the tilling of soil to create a soft layer that is easily planted and fertilized. Ironically though, tilling can end up compacting soils. Remember all the good guys we mentioned earlier and all the ways that they help plants? Tilling soil also kills a lot of the soil life and breaks down mycorrhizal networks from mushrooms that benefit plants. Tilling also releases carbon from the soil into the atmosphere, which is not good with climate change. Plus, carbon is really good for soils, so why not leave it where it's beneficial? Depleted soil. Because soils become so depleted, Fertilizers are used to give back nutrients to plants. Although it's a quick fix, it does not give everything the plant needs and actually hurts the health of the soil and the organisms that live in it. It's a vicious cycle that doesn't help regain the health of the soil that would take care of the needs of the plants. Losing soil. Let's get back to erosion for a minute, which is when soil is moved by water or air. In industrial agriculture, bare and tilled soils are at risk of erosion. Soil and potential agricultural chemicals can end up in water ecosystems, causing potential flooding and other issues downstream. Wind moves soil and causes breathing difficulties because we are breathing in soil from the air. Keeping the soil where it belongs is important to keeping ecosystems healthy and also to be able to continue to grow food, which is important to our survival. Many areas of the world are losing their topsoil at very fast speeds. Worldwide, it is estimated that we have lost half of our topsoil in the last 150 years. Higher water needs. It's not easy to be a plant in unhealthy soil. Shallow roots, dry soils, tillage, erosion, compaction, less life in the soil. Not only is there less nutrition, but water retention is also impacted. Plants need both nutrition and water to live. If the water is not able to stay in the soil, that means more watering will be needed. And a lot is needed. 70% of human water use is for agriculture. Loss of biodiversity. Biodiversity, that is the diversity of life, is super important to healthy ecosystems. We are losing a lot of this biodiversity to industrial agriculture by growing less species, having less varieties in our crops, and by destroying natural habitats. We are also losing a lot of this biodiversity in our soils. Drying, mixing, compacting, and adding fertilizers, as well as pesticides, can all kill the life in our soil. How to care for a living soil. So how can we improve our soils? There is no one-size-fits-all solution. Just like every ecosystem is unique, our gardens will be too. Here are some ideas on how to build soil. Avoiding or limiting tilling. There are many types of machinery used to mix the soil, some more destructive than others. Some farmers take the approach of tilling only when they first establish a field. Others decide to never till. There are lots of other ways of creating workable soil. One example is planting daikon radish to break down hard soil and bring oxygen into the soil. Avoiding or limiting fertilizers. There are many things that can be used to feed soil, like worm poop, compost, fermentations, good quality manure, and much more. It's even possible to make a lot of these at home at very low cost. Also, consider a soil test to understand your soil and its needs. Avoiding or limiting pesticides. Take time to know your critters. Before you assume any insect will damage your garden, do a little research. Some critters may not look super cute and fuzzy, but are great garden friends. An ecosystem in balance has predators, preys, and all kinds of interactions to keep things in balance. And this applies to soil life too. We may not be able to avoid all types of plant damage, but there is a lot working with us if we work with nature. First of all, we can consider what the plant needs when we decide where to plant. For example, wet conditions could add risk of fungal disease for some plants. Second, planting a big variety of plants will add protection to your garden. Who will your plants be friends with? Some species also benefit and get protection from being around other specific plants. Speaking of getting to know our plants, we can consider which plants to get in the first place. Some species or varieties have neat resistances to disease or insects. Plus, when we have healthy soils and ecosystems, the plants themselves are healthier and more resistant to damage. Limit large machinery and soil compaction. So now we know we want to avoid compacting soil. So should we just all stay in our houses and avoid walking anywhere? That seems a little ridiculous, doesn't it? One way to avoid compaction is just to be aware of human movement. For example, we can limit walking where our plants grow by creating rows in between that are meant for walking. We can also avoid working in garden beds when they are super wet. At a larger scale, we can think of compaction before using machinery. Tilling and mixing the soil is also another cause of compacted soil. So, it may be time to reconsider tilling. We can add mulch, ground cover plants, and plant species that help break down hard soil. We can also feed the soil and soil life. Covered soil. Covering soils can help protect them from drying out, erosion, and compaction. It also adds nutrition to the soil, feeds soil life, and adds organic matter. Plus, having soil cover helps lower the garden's need for water. Some popular methods are to cover the soil with live plants, mulch, or combine both. Typically, mulches are straw, leaves, and wood chips. Once they decompose, they add the nutrition to the soil. And in the meantime, they help keep weeds to a minimum. You can even layer plants to mimic nature by planting soil cover, vines, bushes, and trees to create a food forest. High biodiversity. In nature, we see many species living together. We want the same thing in our garden. A large variety of food crops, soil life, and species that interact with our gardens. Biodiversity helps protect your garden in a multitude of ways and also helps create healthier ecosystems. Also consider planting more perennials. These plants live for many years and have many advantages. For example, having roots in the soil year-round helps build soil and soil life. Plant more native species and leave some wild spaces. Native species are very important to the environment and to the wildlife that live in it. They are also resilient to the climate because they belong in the local ecosystem. Native species can also help keep soil life healthy, the soil quality high, and protect the land from erosion. Unfortunately, when it comes to industrial agriculture, wild species are not usually kept or planted. Another thing to think about is keeping natural spaces in the first place. Nature knows what it's up to, so keeping some areas untouched is a great way to let nature exist alongside food growing spaces. Why soil health is important. Now that we know more about soils, you may be getting an idea why soil health is so important. Nutrition. High nutrient density food comes from healthy soil and healthy ecosystems. That means food really high in nutrition comes from healthy gardens. When we feed our soil, it feeds us. And when we eat nutritious food, it helps us stay healthy. Food security. It also gives us stability and safety with our food because healthy soils are better at handling water. When there is too much or too little water, healthy soils can manage better with floods or droughts. Healthy soil also helps plants deal with disease and pests. Just like us, when plants are healthy, they get sick less often. Healthy soils are also more resistant to erosion, meaning we don't lose our topsoil. And we get to keep all that good stuff where it belongs. Carbon sinking. Healthy soils can absorb and use carbon. This makes soil a great ally to fight climate change. If we could increase organic matter 1% worldwide on all agricultural soils, we could sink 256 billion tons of carbon. That is already 3/4 of what we need to arrive at our carbon target. Plus, if we don't till and plow the soil, we don't release the carbon that's already in there. There isn't one way to do things. There are so many ways to create great food while protecting and restoring ecosystems. Polyculture, permaculture, food forests, regenerative agriculture, silvopasture. There are a lot of options out there. It's also important to recognize the traditional knowledge involved in many of these methods. There is a lot of knowledge that comes from indigenous communities around the world that already practiced a lot of these brilliant methods of growing food long before terms like permaculture were invented. Our planet faces many challenges, but there's a lot we can do. We can build more resilient, healthy, and diverse food systems. We can build strong communities where we value learning and sharing. we can find relationship, respect, and wisdom in the way we interact with the world around us. From building soil to building community, there is a lot we can do to have a positive impact in the spaces we live in. Want to learn more and try permaculture hands-on? We have a target to build 1 edible food forest in every ward of Sudbury. That means there is likely one near you already. These food forests mimic forest ecosystems while providing us with food like apples, pears, sour cherries, raspberries, and a variety of herbs. We also have many projects to get involved in, from planting to maintenance to harvesting. We also have free workshops and learning sessions. Get in touch and find more info on our website at sudburysharedharvest.ca.